Welcome to the Final Girls podcast, where we only like kids when they're killing each other on a remote island. I'm Anna Bogutska, co-founder of the Final Girls Collective and your podcast host. If you're new to the show, welcome. We are now entering a new phase in our teen horror season. We've done the granddaddies of slasher films from the 70s and 80s. We've done the golden age of 90s teen horror. And now we are going to be talking about films from the new millennium. Before we dive into our episode this week, the quick regular reminder, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Final Girls UK, and as good millennial girls, we also have a Patreon, which you can find at patreon.com/The Final Girls. If you enjoy this podcast, please do consider taking a minute, 30 seconds of your day to leave us a review, which I will then read and either be completely depressed for a day or very excited that people actually listen to the show. I am joined in this episode by a regular guest, Isora Barbara Brown, a writer and actress, to dive into Battle Royale, the Japanese film that spawned too many copycats to count, influenced countless films, TV series, and video games, was banned in many a country for a very long time, and became a whole part of our lexicon. Despite coming out in the year 2000, Kinji Fukasaku's teen horror film has become a modern classic that continues influencing pop culture to this day. Please note, as per usual, all of our discussions are spoiler heavy pretty much from the start. So if you haven't watched Battle Royale ever, just stop listening to this right now and go watch it. It is an essential film. And if you haven't watched it in a little while, we will be going into details, but we do recap the film a little bit at the start. Please also keep in mind that particularly in this episode, we talk quite graphically about teen-on-teen violence and have conversations about scenes that depict suicide in case that is something that you might want to avoid. With all of that said, please enjoy our take on Battle Royale. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast to talk on this fine, crispy January morning. To talk with me about kids murdering kids.
Yes, just to talk about a little kid-on-kid violence. You're welcome. I'm happy to be here as usual.
So to kick off, and we're only going to be talking about this film. It's been a couple of kind of double bill episodes, so I'm excited to actually properly dig into just one film, especially Battle Royale, because this has had such a massive influence and just does not get any less fun or any less violent, no matter how many years have passed since it was made.
Right.
So what is your relationship with Battle Royale, and what was it like for you revisiting it?
So I first saw it, which is now becoming a common theme with me, in the sense of I was a teen and some other teen was like, you should watch this film. I had like a VHS of it or something. Mm-hmm. But I was an older teen. I was like maybe 16 or 17 because it came out when I was 14. I obviously didn't see it in the cinema. And I remember it being that kind of thing. I think it was like one of the first ever like Japanese films I saw. Mm-hmm. Probably, maybe even the first ever.
Oh, cool.
And it was one of those feelings of feeling quite grown up to see a film that was like this brutal, but also in Japanese, like subtitles, like just a different kind of film to like a film I was used to watching at that age. And it definitely made me feel very sophisticated. Like when my friends would be like, oh yeah, I saw this movie. I was like, oh, you watch movies? How quaint. Like, I watch cinema. I actually watch film.
We would have been
gave you
friends
an
in high school. Yeah. It's like, oh, you just watch American films? Well, I saw this like
that's so interesting.
the subtitles.
Cinema, like foreign cinema. So it definitely had that feeling of being very grown up. Watching, it didn't feel like even horrors I'd seen at that point, even like teen slashers I'd seen at that point. It felt more mature and different. It felt more layered and deeper and more brutal than the teen horrors I was used to seeing. So it immediately felt very special to me. And I loved it. And it was one of those films at that age I talked about a lot, which was one of the markers or one of the starts of my tastes. Like suddenly you explore other things because you've seen this film. And it kind of was one of the first ones I was like, oh, I like also these kinds of films apparently. And I don't know, it kind of was I don't want to say awakening, that sounds quite dramatic, but it was like a like a first taste of something I knew, like I liked, that I didn't know I liked before.
Yes. And why did it feel so different from the other teen horrors that you'd seen up until that point? Or even now still?
I think it holds to quite a lot of realism. Obviously, I know like the whole concept is based in, quite dystopian idea of the world or of a country, but actually them as characters and actually the deaths and stuff and how scared they are and how they react to it is kept within realism. And it's really brutal. And I think that's what the difference is that you can watch most slashers, or teen horrors, which tend to be slashers, and they're making silly choices, and it's that thing of someone like hunting them, and the idea of them killing each other and them feeling like they have no choice and being scared and wanting to survive but not knowing what to do just gives it it's more bleak. But also it just means that there's more connection to them or more sympathy or like you have for them, because they're not just like running around being idiots. It's not like a fun ride in the same way that I think other teen horrors are. It's still a fun movie, but it's not every death is like meant to be like super entertaining. Some of it is just meant to be really upsetting and brutal. And even their backstories, like even that, some of it's really dark. Well, a lot of their backstory is quite dark. So yeah, I think that's what it is. It's like darker and bleaker and more brutal.
I think for me, it's that thing that you alluded to of they're not like the teenagers in kind of American teen slasher films or other slasher films, because those films are designed for you to kind of expect the kills and root for the kills in one way or another. Sure, you're rooting for someone to survive because that's kind of that's the narrative that we're very used to. But here, you're kind of rooting for them all to survive, but also you start picking favorites as you're watching the film, and who your favorite might change when you rewatch the film. Like my favorite certainly changed from this rewatching it this time around versus the first couple times that I watched it. And then you're kind of rooting for that one kid, but that also means that you're rooting for everyone else to die and for them to become a murderer. So It's this really complicated kind of connecting with the characters, but also here they are actually kind of completely on their own. So most of the kids in the teen horror films are usually like either ignored by the parents, or maybe the parents are just not around to help, or they're unable to help. And here every single adult is part of this game where they're pitting these kids against each other and or sometimes literally murdering kids straight up. So they're completely on their own. And it also reminded me of this. I don't know if you used to do this as a kid, but I'd have like this vivid imagination and would sometimes like play these sort of games, either well, I was an only kid, so either by myself. I know it's a bit sad, but still. Or like with other kids where you get like real intense. You know, like how when you're a kid and you make up a game, you get really intense about the rules and what's right and what isn't, and what's fair game and what isn't. Or like the playground games, like when you're just chasing, I don't know, I don't remember what they were called, but like I remember there was a lot of chasing people around and a lot of like go-go's and shit like that. And people would get very into it. And I just have this sense about Battle Royale as well as I was rewatching. It's like, it's got that kid-like obsession with either figuring out the rules or breaking the rules. This real kind of dogged intensity about it. And if anything kind of goes against this little rule book or anti-rule book that they build, they go absolutely apeshit. Yeah.
Yeah. They lose it the minute something steps outside of, they don't, which reiterate, like, it's that's what's nice about it, that they're actually kids.
Mm-hmm.
And they, even in this extreme situation, they've been given this set of rules. They're like, okay. And then they figured out in their little factions, like, this is how we handle this. And the minute something goes outside of that, just like, wow, it's just all out panic.
Yeah.
And it's like, because I don't even think I'd even got to the point of like even working within the rules that exist in the first place. So do you mean it's already really difficult, and they found a way to cope, and then the minute that coping is even a little bit threatened, they are like, anything could happen, just anything could happen. And it's really interesting, because it's just like, that everyone's on the edge of being able to do these horrible things to survive when they're scared. The minute they get scared, it's like they're actually capable of doing things they never thought they'd be capable of, because they're so scared and there doesn't seem to be many options. But like, I know what you mean about the game thing, and it being like, and because they have the 3 days, it's that kind of feeling of like, up until it's really crucial, I feel like more people can hold it together in the first and the second day, because maybe you believe that you can figure something out. Maybe it won't actually happen like they said it's going to. Do you mean? So I think it was easy. It's easier, and it gets harder and harder as the days go on, because it's just like, well, we're getting closer and closer to that final point now.
So let's kind of go back to basics for a second, and kind of, can you try and summarize the plot of Battle Royale for anyone who might have seen it and then kind of doesn't remember that much about it?
So I think it's insinuated at the beginning, the whole of Japan is going through like economic crisis, and the kids are, I don't know, out of control. The kids are frustrated, basically, and the kids are kind of not going to school, and they're blaming like teenage delinquency on a lot of these issues. They don't really see the connection, but that's apparently the problem. And so they come up with this, it's called the BR Act, Battle Royale Act, where they pick a class, so a whole class of children from a random school, and they send them to this island. So in this film, we see the girl from the last winner of this come back from the island, and she's just like a terrifying, bloody, splug-soaked little girl, like carrying a teddy. So, but our class that we follow throughout the film, we see them going on a school trip. They're on a coach, and at some point they all get gassed, they all pass out, and then they're taken to this island, and you're launched into it like immediately. The first part is maybe like 50 minutes, like to set up the story. And they find themselves in this like classroom of this abandoned school with their old teacher, who had previously been stabbed by one of the classmates in the like leg or butt or whatever. And he's there running the show today, and they get played a video of this incredibly perky girl explaining the horrifying and terrifying rules of this game, which lasts 3 days. They all have collars around their neck, which have microphones in, that they can hear everything they're saying, and also monitors their heartbeat, and also tracks them around this island. They have 3 days to try and kill everyone else, or try and be the last one to survive at the very least. And if there's more than one person alive by the last day, everyone's little necklace explodes. There's also danger zones. So the whole island they give them a map that has a grid system on it, and they give them squares every day, or every like few hours every day, to tell them what areas are danger zones. So if you're caught in a danger zone, after a certain time, your necklace will also explode. So there's lots of perils. They get a bag that has like some basic needs and a weapon, but your weapon might be like binoculars.
Yeah.
So some people like get an axe or like a gun, and some people are like, here's a fan.
Yeah.
So real luck of the draw. And it's brutal, and that's it. And then they're not given, anyone who argues at the beginning like gets immediately taken care of. So they're forced to toe the line really early on, and then they're just sent out into the wilderness to try and survive in these 3 days. And yeah, that's it. And it's really, really brutal, like from the off.
And I mean, well done. But also, one of the things that really struck me this time around rewatching is that it not only does it like throw us into the action straight away, but it also throws us into a whole bunch of characters that are introduced very quickly, and kind of most of them just going to take their bag, their guns, or their fans and just run away. And then you spend a bit more time with everyone as the film progresses. But did you find it, considering that also anyone could die at any time or get killed, or kill themselves, or just slip and accidentally die as well. Did you find it easy to get attached to some of the characters?
Well, I think they're quite good at like, this is going to be a really mean thing to say, but clearing the fodder, like at the beginning, which is, I don't mean...
Oh my God!
I just mean in terms of narrowing it down to our main cast.
Fuck like, those kids is what you're saying.
The film says, fuck those kids. They're very quick at clearing the chaff from the wheat. They're like, we're gonna make it very obvious who our main cast is really early. Mm-hmm. We're gonna clear a lot of the people because it's 30 kids. Mm-hmm. So they're like, we're gonna get rid of a huge chunk of them so that you know who our main players are, who's gonna be significant here. So I think they give them like, and even though that it does feel like they're getting rid of them quite quickly, they still give you enough of them that you're like, oh, this is brutal. So like one of the first people to die is obviously Nobu, who's the kid who, he was in foster care. We see him at the beginning stab the teacher who ends up running the show on the island.
Takeshi Kitano, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, he doesn't seem like a bad kid, just kind of like, you know, he's had a hard time. He's disillusioned. He's unhappy. And he's arguing. He's like trying to fight this whole time in this room rather than listening. And so his like neck thing goes off. So he's like, whole neck blows out. And you're like, oh my God. So he's a character we know because we start with him on the coach. And so we know a little bit more about him. So he's one of the people that feels a bit like a main character from the start. Mm-hmm. And he dies like immediately. So I think it's very good at being like, oh, anyone could die. At kind of being a bit like, yes, there are going to be people that we put front and center, but they could also die. A girl he throws a knife at this girl's head. Like, oh my God, it's an incredible throw. Yeah, like at the beginning. And she like dies immediately. And then you get stuff like, so when he first walks out, there's a girl with an arrow through her neck. Then the guy who has the crossbow, who accidentally got shot with his own crossbow. And then, you know, a couple of kids kill themselves, which, you know, again, feels quite sad. I think they rely on you watching it going, it's sad because it's teenagers, and especially the ones who die early, because they've died because it's all happened so quickly and they don't know what they're doing. They haven't had time to think or plan or do anything. So it's sad for that reason. They've come here and they've not even been given a chance, because what chance do you have if you walk out of a building because you're third or fourth or fifth? Someone already has a weapon and someone can already just like shoot you before you even got your head around what's going on. And I think they rely on that being enough for you to be like, oh man, this is like a rough time. And then as time goes on, you get attached like gradually, because they give you little snippets of these people, these kids, like past lives of their lives beforehand. So you gradually get more and more attached the more you know about them. And some of them, like some characters like Mitsuko, it's like at the very end of her story where you really see, like, you're like, oh man, you realize how sad it is actually. And, you know, it's really clever to be like, this was a person, rather than it being like, here's some teens on this island, you don't really know much about them apart from them in this space. It goes, no, this is them in like a normal time, in a mundane normal time. This is them. And isn't it sad? Like, no matter how they've behaved on this island, isn't it sad that they've ended up here? So
did you get attached to any characters in particular?
I love the lead guy. What's his name? Shuya, or everyone calls him Nanahara. Like,
yeah.
He's adorable. And I love Mitsuko. I love her. She just a badass. She just comes out. She's like, well, I'm going to be like, I'm just going to be a bad bitch this whole time. That's my plan. She's also on a period the whole time, which I'm like, you know what?
Relatable content.
She's like, I don't have time for this. Like, I'm going to go out on my own. She's also it's amazing. Like, I'm like, she's just a powerhouse. So I really loved her. I loved her arc. I love when you find out like what she's been through at the beginning. I'm like, yeah, man, she's like just hurt and she's just trying to protect herself. She's just trying to survive. But yeah, I think that, Nana and Mitsuko are my, I also love, who's the orange haired guy? Is it Kazuo?
Oh, I always forget his name, but he's the most memorable one for me. And, you know, I know we were texting about this last night. As with everything, questionable taste, but, you know, it is Battle Royale. But I'm like, if I was in high school and if I was on that island, I would 100% be crushing on the psychotic orange hair dude.
If I was in that room, and I, like, at the beginning, in the classroom, and he was sitting there, like, in the shadows, like, in his little weird suit, like, I'd be
it's the suit. Yeah. What teenager wears a suit? What kind of Leo DiCaprio, Romeo and Juliet shit is this? I'm into it.
Like, definitely straight out of an anime. He literally looks like an anime character, and I'm like, I'm obsessed with this. I'm obsessed with him. And if I was in that room and I'd been like, well, I'm going to try and team up with him and maybe have a relationship. I don't know.
Isn't he one of the two who also volunteer? So you know that they're absolutely insane.
Yeah, he's like a transfer student, right? They call them transfer students. So they volunteer to come. So he just wants to murder people.
Yes.
Like, he's definitely not well. But I'd have been like, maybe we team up. And like, part of me wishes that him and Mitsuko teamed up, because they would have been like just an amazing murder power couple. I'd like to see that movie where they team up and they're just like, I don't know, going around this island being like, it'll be like, what's that film? Natural Born Killers, but Battle Royale version. Them two being in love, but also just murdering a bunch of their school friends.
I would watch that spin-off.
I would watch that film. We'll pitch it. But yeah, so those are the ones that stand out because I think they're just the most memorable. The girl that Nana's with, who is Noriko, is very sweet, but just not very like, I don't know. She's not my favorite. Like, she's nice. She's very sweet. But
and kind of on that note, aside from the kind of the designated hot psychotic one, and the sweet and sad one, kind of what are the teens like in the film? Like, how do they all start behaving when they're put in this game?
They act like teens, which I like for the most part. Apart from the more like verging on the psychotic ones, most of them are just scared and they just react rather than they're not thinking anything through. They're just reacting to the circumstances around them, and they adapt quickly. But also, it takes them like getting hurt or almost getting killed to be like, oh my god, people are actually going to try and kill me. Because I think at the beginning there's part of them that thinks, well, my friends won't try and kill me. You know, these are all kids who know each other, like, well. It's not a bunch of random kids on the island. It's like, these are people you know. So it's hard to get your head around initially, I think, that your schoolmate might just be okay with, like, shooting you in the face. So they take a little time to adapt. I really like that it gives them space to actually, like find this difficult and need to, like, figure out what they're doing and have a plan. And try and get it. I mean, and they're also better than me. If someone gave me a map and was like, B5 is danger zone, I'd be like, where the fuck is B5? Like, I'm not a scout. Like, I would have definitely been accidentally in a danger zone and died immediately. So kudos to them. They're really diligent. They listen to the rules. They're really good at following them. They're really good at, like, at least that, like, staying alive for the main part. It's just not knowing how dangerous it actually is outside. And they're quite rightfully, like, scared and basically basing their decisions on that, on how do we stay alive for the longest. And only a few of them are really, like, hunting. Most of them are just like, how do I stay alive for the longest time? Which I think feels realistic to me. I feel like if you're out hunting, potentially you could get killed too. So most people are just trying to hunker down somewhere and get through it and hope that something happens before the end of the 3 days to keep them alive. And there's, there's a gang of cool kids who get immediately, like, murdered by like, anime guy. Like they, they formed a little gang, I think, really cool because they have cool weapons, and he just, like, takes them all out straight away.
There's a gang of girls who kind of hide away, and they live this, like, fairly placid, very protective
in
little
the lighthouse.
Yeah. They're I mean, that scene also is my favorite scene
it's
of
fantastic,
the entire film.
That scene. It's fantastic. But, like, I feel either you're on, so some people end up on their own but still mostly trying to hide, or there's a pair of them who are, again, mostly trying to hide. So I feel like most of them are just, like, not wanting to do this thing and only doing it, like, so even some people, it feels like they're hiding, and only when someone comes across them do they then attempt to kill them. It's still like defensive rather than being on the attack. And I think that's what I like about it. I like that they feel like they're just teens. I mean, it helps that all in school uniform and stuff as well. It's like, this is just really hard. It's an impossible situation to be in. And it's like, I think that you go back and forth between, do we try and, like, go and kill people, or do we try and defend ourselves? Do we try and get out? Do we kill ourselves to end it quicker? Look, I think they go back and forth on between what's the best idea and what isn't. And then you have these other 3 guys who are, like, hackers, who are, like, well, that one guy is, like, a hacker, and he's little helpers. And they're, like, actually really trying to fight this system, and they actually help fight the system in the end. And so, yeah, I really love the actual groups of people you get, but I love that the running thread is that they're all just really scared. That's it. That's the through line, apart from anime guy, who is not scared at all.
He's having a great time.
He's having it's like the best holiday he's ever been on. This is like, he's like Thompson all inclusive, like, trip. He's safe for this, like, all year. He's having the best time. Even at the end of his life, he's, like, still like, this is great. This is exactly how I want to go out. Just having I would love a glimpse of his backstory, because what the fuck, dude? Like, what is happening with you?
I know. I want a whole spin-off with him, but also his death scene is also fabulous. And I use this word very specifically. It's like, no, that is a fabulous fucking death scene, because that guy wanted to die, and he wanted to go out in a blaze of glory, and in his little white shirt, open-collared white shirt and black suit, and he wanted to go out dramatically, and he did. So you know what? Well done.
He's, like, blind and, like, bleeding from his eyes. Like, by the end of it, it's really, truly glorious. And
You kind of mentioned this through line of all the kids being scared, and yes, they are, and we get that, and especially, like, how what makes it really, I think, connect outside of all the extreme violence and all of that is the fact that we're all scared all the time, like, to one degree or another. We always feel fear, and then when you're a kid, that fear is so intense, and sometimes I don't know if this is I think this is a universal thing, when, if you get really scared in particular ways that maybe you don't even necessarily think about on an everyday basis, you kind of regress back to that really childhood fear. Like, if you're genuinely really afraid of something, you kind of become a child again in one or another. You kind of lose that ability to control yourself the way that you can as an adult. And that's one of the things that really, I think, the teen part of this film always stands out in my mind a lot more than the horror part. I mean, yes, it's, like, graphic to shit, but I just remember all these really, really terrified kids trying to make these make-believe allegiances and trying to behave like adults, but actually just being absolutely terrified and really vulnerable in so many ways and alone. And like as a kid, that is the most terrifying thing, you know, just being by yourself. And the fact that we start the film with this backstory of this one kid who finds his dad's body who'd committed suicide, and that like keeps popping up in his mind. And it's like even before he gets thrown into the battle royale, he is by himself, and what is he supposed to do with that?
And he even says when he's talking about it, like in the voiceover, he's like, there was no one, he had no one could help him. It was just kind of like everyone dealt with the practical aspects of it. He got put in a foster home, all that stuff, but there was no one for him really to like talk him through what that was or what that meant or how he should feel. And he mentions like being depressed and quitting sports, and like he quits the basketball team, right? Like it's just, there's all the, and what I like about it is that there's this whole thing. So like the state, which kind of feels like what the adults represent in this film, is going, we have issues and the kids aren't taking it seriously and the kids are not turning up to school and they're not. And then showing these glimpses of these kids in their personal lives and what they've gone through is like, no one was looking after them really. You're mad they weren't going to school or were like disinterested or whatever, but no one was like looking after these kids. Providing a school, but like no actual care is not a thing. Like it doesn't, it's not good enough. And so I think there's a fragility to all of them. And especially even, it's not a teen film or even teen show in the sense of they're not like, a bit grubbied up and a bit bloody, but still running rampant. They get really hurt. Like even if they're not killed, they could get really, really hurt. And their injuries, like, you know, hinder them for the rest of the film. It's not like other films where it's like, oh, it's just a scratch and they're actually mostly fine and they're just a bit dirty and like it's a bit hard. But no, it's like, no, even if they don't die, they could get injured to the point where they're in a very vulnerable position. And it's not only them being physically fragile, but also the safety being like, in any safety they carve out being fragile, not just because of the island and the stakes and what's happening, but because of their panic level is actually so high that anything can tip it over. It's brilliantly done. And it feels really well observed as far as like how teens would react in this situation.
And how else do you think it works as a teen horror? I watched this, and I sent it to you. I watched this video essay by one of my favorite video essays, The Nerd Writer, from a while back. And he had this whole sort of proposition that he thought that Battle Royale was one of the best teen movies ever made, kind of alongside, you know, the John Hughes teen movies and alongside the 2000s teen movies that we grew up with, that we kind of think about when we think about the teen genre. And I'll link to it in the show notes. And it's kind of, he's got this great thing about that being the whole film essentially being the previous generation trying to communicate their despair and their experiences of violence, and this kind of goes into the director's own experiences of World War II to the new generation, because there is a gap there. There's kind of a breakdown in communication, and the only way that they can communicate it is by making the kids experience the kind of desperate violence that they had gone through in a different scenario. How do you think it works as a teen movie and as a teen horror movie, specifically kind of between those two genres?
Well, I think it works incredibly because it sets up this impossible situation, right? On the island, it's an impossible situation. It's kill or be killed. And there is no good way or correct way to handle it. And I think so that makes it horrifying enough in itself. And they're also just like, I was an idiot as a teenager. Like, they're idiot teens and they don't know what they're doing. And none of them ever get to a point where they're like, there's no like montage scene where someone like packs themselves up with guns and gets really good at fighting in the 3 days. It's like, no, they're pretty much just themselves the whole time. And there's also other things like memories from school and stuff that affect how, like, there's a great scene with Mitsuko and another girl where she's like, she accuses Mitsuko of all this like bad behavior before. So she, you know, there's also this resentment that's built up because they actually like have all these schoolyard like issues with each other as well, that that feeds or adds into how they react to each other, who they're scared of bumping into, who they're looking for, who they feel safe with. So I think it works incredibly well because of that. And I think unlike other teen things, they actually look like children, which as far as like modern teen things go, like a lot of the time they don't look like actual kids. We know it's like we're doing a bit of like cognitive dissonance where we're going, well, I know that's a 25-year-old man, but sure, he's 17. Like, whereas these actually look like children, so they look physically not as able as well, in the sense of like they're not as big as the adults who are running this thing. They couldn't get into a physical fight with one of the soldiers or the teacher and come out of that well, and that's also a feeling of like, no, you couldn't even just fight back really in a way that would be effective. So I think that's a massive part of it. And yeah, it is just a teen film. It's very much about their lives and about how, and I do, yeah, the director's story is like, I mean, in that video essay, you get a glimpse of him talking about it, about like him and his friends having to clear bodies like during the war, and you just not talking and getting on with it because it's just what you were doing and you're in shock. But I think it's because he also mentions that, the director was 70 when he made this film, right?
Yes.
Fukasaku, he was 70 when he made this. It was like the last film he finished making. And it feels more to me like, yes, communicating what he went through, but because he sees the teens so well, it feels more like he sees himself in the teens rather than the adults, if you see what I mean.
Yes. Because
the teens are written incredibly sympathetically. So it feels more like he's trying to go, rather than it being like, oh, the state represents people who've been through this, like the adults in this they've been through this and they want to explain to the teens in this film what we went through. It's more like he's going, here's a film and this is how brutal it felt. I was one of, like, this is what it felt like to be a teen in this time, to like people who are watching it, rather, like, because it feels like he has put himself in the place of the teens rather than the adults. That's how it feels to me. That's the point of view it feels like it comes from. And that's why the teens are done so well. He seems to remember what it's like to have to try and suddenly have to grow up to try and be practical when you're not equipped to be that practical about certain things, about brutality, about death, about violence, and to also try and survive and to just be scared and sad and having to get, like, our lead guy, Nana, he sees Nobu's his best friend and he sees him die at the very beginning, and he has to immediately get his shit together because he's then out in this brutal world. And like, that feels like him to me. That feels like where he's put himself in that feeling of having to get over something immediately. And there's a point where Nana wants to fight he can see he's about to get up and like maybe like start trying to fight the teacher, start trying to fight Kitano, and he gets held back. And just having like your friends having to also immediately make that switch in your brain to what the situation is, to make that decision to be like, oh, this is dangerous and actually this is how we have to behave. That's what it feels like. But yeah, because it feels very based in the teens' emotions and their lives and actually them as people. It feels very much from their point of view. And I think in other teen films, while they're fun and stuff, they don't feel like real teenagers a lot of the times. And you're not really getting it from their point of view of what your memory of being a teen was. It's more like, oh, these are teenagers, but they're also hot and and they're also going to make it, or they're going to try and make smart decisions, they're going to plan immediately. It's like, yeah, I feel like that through line of fear and being scared really lends itself to making it realistic and making it a quintessential teen drama. And I honestly think not many things come close. I think there's a lot of J horror that actually does really well with it, but I've been watching Yellow Jackets, which reminds me of it a little bit, because it's that similar thing of like, oh, they don't know what they're doing. And but obviously there's a more supernatural element in it, but like that's one of the closest things I can think of at the moment that's modern, where I'm like, yeah, this feels like a bunch of idiots on an island.
I mean, it's very Lord of the Flies, isn't it? It's like what happens when you leave a bunch of not quite adults to fend in a really adult situation. Like, what kicks in? What's childlike about them and what's adult-like about them? And it's a real dissonance to see both of those parts of them kind of try to coexist, that they can be so intensely childlike about some things and so scarily adult about others. And I kind of wanted to use that to talk a little bit about, we've talked a lot about the kids and stuff, but we haven't really talked about the adults, or rather the one adult that we get in this film, Kitano, played by Takeshi Kitano, who is kind of appears, he's kind of a presence throughout the entire film and has a couple of choice scenes. But what did you make of him?
Well, I think it's really funny that just before this you were talking about Lord of the Flies, because the guy who wrote the book, he was a teacher, and he wrote it because he hated. He was like, these fucking kids. He's like, these little shits, they'd immediately get to an island and lose their shit. Very much from like an adult point of view, and it feels like he has that same kind of like a viewpoint where he's like, these little shits. He likes exactly one kid in the whole group of them. And he just like, what's really fascinating about him is that he is calm, like pretty much the entire time. Like he is just, even when he loses temper, it's in a way that's not like, he's never ranting or raving. He's very much just like, I don't know. He's like removed from himself. He's just going through, like, not going through the motions. He seems to be like kind of enjoying it, but he just is. It's what's terrifying about him is that he just kind of like just deals with everything. Just very like, this is what's happening. Oh, okay. Like, hey, do you have a problem with that? Oh, okay. I'm just gonna like throw my knife in your head. Whoops. Like, and it's just it's far too whimsical. I don't know what the word is for the situation, which makes it even scarier. These kids arrive in this terrifying situation, and this guy is just like, anyway, just sit down, be quiet, listen to this explanation video. And then like the girl in the video is being like, she's like, oh, good morning. And he's like doing like a good morning back. And it's like, why are you like this? And he's obviously just a very incredibly sad man. He obviously has like a disconnect with his family, especially his daughter. And he paints that incredibly weird painting.
God.
He does a little painting.
Oh,
where he
God.
paints all the dead kids, and then like the one kid who survives, he paints as Noriko, who's his favorite, who he I guess sees as like a surrogate daughter,
who he wants to survive. He's kind of like, we don't really see that much, but you can sort of see that he is not above rigging the game so that she survives.
Right. But also it's like, when did he paint this? But like, it's just, and it's like, it's not even like, it's not some beautiful like oil painting. It's like this really childlike, weird painting as well. It's like, you're a strange man. So yeah, I think what's most scary about him is that he's like taking naps. He's doing his little announcements. He's doing it like, it's a job that he kind of enjoys, but it's a job at the end of the day. And even at the end, even when he's got like bullet holes in him, he literally is like still incredibly weirdly calm. And I'm just like, this guy, it feels like he has nothing to live for, which is why he can be here and in some parts like kind of enjoy this, or kind of take it as something not so heavy or not so bad, is because he doesn't seem to like be happy with himself or his life at all. So there's like no stakes for him, really.
There's also like this really, and at times it really made me laugh, like these shots of him just sort of looking at the blackboard because the kids all didn't want to attend class, or just him doing jumping jacks by himself in front of this massive building and courtyard. Like, there is so much, there's kind of this despondent loneliness, but also he so fucking hates the kids as well.
He hates them.
He really
calls them potatoes at one point.
Which is the best cancelled.
He's like, he has to come in and look at all these like potatoes. And I'm just like, this is, I mean, like truly like the writer of Lord of the Flies. He's like, I hate these kids. You're all pieces of shit. I wonder how he got this job. Did he apply? Did he see it advertised? I was like, yeah, I would like to do this. Thank you.
I also wonder if it's like, I mean, you know, that I'm like building this whole imaginary world around it of like, is he the one that's designated for this area? Are there more of them? You know, is he kind of the boss of the whole thing? There's so many things that could happen. And I do kind of, it is interesting as well to see Takeshi Kitano in this role. Perhaps because like obviously we're coming to this film a little later on and we're not from a Japanese culture, but I always really associated him with kind of a certain brand of art house, kind of very somber cinema. And it baffles me to when I read that he was like a massive comedic star in Japan and like a game show host, which is why he got this role and kind of why they were using him as kind of a pool for the film itself. And I cannot imagine Takeshi Kitano kind of like being peppy. You know what I mean?
Just full of pep. But I think maybe that's why it works. Like I think like often we see like comedic actors or comedians being really good at the darkest roles because often there's like a lot of darkness underlying comedy or people who do comedy for a living. And there is like, you know, there's a lot of examples of those actors, those people being really good at like roles that are, like when they have to go to that place, I just can immediately access it. So that kind of doesn't surprise me, actually. That kind of makes sense to me because there's also like a weird, that's how he brings that weird like lightness to it. That's terrifying. Like it's the lightness in him in it. It's because he's not domineering. He's not like yelling and sneering and threatening the kids. There's a lightness to him. And that's what makes him it feels very unpredictable and very like it puts you on edge, like someone being like that in that kind of situation. And I think that's why, and also knowing in the times he kills 2 kids at the beginning, but again, not out of like anger. It's not in a way that's like, it's like he beats them to death. It's this very decisive, precise thing he does where it's like all very like the girl who he throws a knife at she says at the beginning this is against the law and he like kind of makes fun of her for it. Then when he throws a knife in her head he's like, oh, was that not like, am I following the laws? And he just makes like kind of a weird joke about it afterwards and you're like, fuck, like it's just that much more fucked up in the same way that like the idea of the Joker is more fucked up than a lot of other villains. Like a villain with a reason is less scary than a villain that seems to be doing this and you don't know why. Like who's doing this and kind of enjoying it. And
because it's pure it's pure chaos.
Yeah.
And you can't control and you can't explain chaos and you cannot reason with chaos.
Yeah.
Which is why it's terrifying. It's because there is absolutely no way out. There is no kind of soft underbelly that you could potentially kind of tackle them into. You can't
connect and you can't reason with him. And I think and he's the only one. He appears on the island at some point, right? He like goes to make sure Noriko's okay. And Mitsuko, he's still what's the scariest thing. Mitsuko, who's not scared of anything, when she sees him, like immediately runs off. And I'm just like, right. So he carries it. He's walking around this island. These kids have weapons, you know, and he's not even remotely scared of walking around like to make sure Noriko's okay because he knows that he's scary enough, or he just doesn't care that one of them might shoot him, which is even more. And even when the hackers get into the system and they shut everything down and all the other soldiers are panicking and he's just like, he just turns it off. He's like, turn it back on again in a bit. There's nothing that could happen that could faze him. Like literally, which is really, he's a great character because it's really unhinged in like this very quiet, like unsettling way.
And his kind of turn at the end, the reveal of his really creepy painting and his kind of mild obsession with the girl is just like so out of character as well. You do not expect it from that cold, not calculating, but just kind of unfeeling adult. Yeah. And just a really, and I think that's been
So for me, he represents all the adults in that, because we don't really get good representations, even in the flashbacks of adults in these kids' lives.
Yeah, that's
there
true.
hasn't really been any good ones by the looks of it. So he feels like he kind of represents all of them. Like, he says he cares for Iriko, but it's just like, yeah, but she's still here. She's still terrified. You know what I mean? It's just, I don't know, hoping she survives to what end? What's her life going to be like? You know, it's all these things that are just a bit like, oh, you're not really thinking about these kids and what they, sorry if you can hear that weird ringing in the back, it's my phone, which is like a very weird house phone ring, but yeah, there's like, even though he cares for one of these kids, it's like, you're not thinking about this in the bigger picture. This is still not good for her. The guy who spent like the whole game protecting her dying in front of her will not be good for her. Like, even if you think you're like saving her somehow, this is not saving. So yeah, I think it's just, and it's clearly, you know, he has this bad relationship with his daughter, and he's kind of trying, but not really trying. Like, trying in the sense that he, like, answers the phone to her or calls her or whatever. But, you know, he's not there. And this guy is obviously, like, removed from something, from reality in some way. Like, something's wrong with him.
But we also don't really get that much background information about what the reality in the Battle Royale world is. Like, we get that little bit of information about the political unrest and crime and kids going wild and all this stuff, but we don't really see it. So we're just thrust into this isolated death island.
And you're right about the idea of it being, because when we see that at the very beginning, we see the girl come back from obviously another previous Battle Royale, these kids don't know about it. So, and there are reporters there when she comes back, right? So it feels like maybe it moves like towns or areas or like whatever. But yeah, we don't see any of that. We don't know how widespread, how widely known this is. We don't see parents' reactions. We don't see like, because they say we've notified your parents, but we don't know. We never see the parents getting that notification or how they react to this.
And kind of it's interesting to look at it now over 20 years after it was made, because it was hugely controversial, like banned in several countries. It wasn't released in the United States for like 10 years after it actually came out in Japan. Like, there was a lot of controversy around the amount of kid on kid violence. So kind of on two questions on this, kind of, what do you think of the teen on teen violence? And kind of like, why does it feel more extreme compared to, say, any of the horror films that we've covered so far in the season, or that, you know, that we still got coming, or that we're very used to seeing, especially after the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. You know, this film is the first one of the millennium that we're covering. And do you think kind of this kind of controversy still follows it around?
I don't know if like there's any more controversy about it, because now I think it'd be hard. I think it'd be incredibly hard to be controversial in certain like genres. But I think it was at the time it was met, or it's different. I think it's still different now, because when we see teens dying in other horror films, usually either it's like an outside person who's there to murder them. Even if it's one of the teens, it's one teen with like a problem who has reasons for killing all these other teens and like has planned it or whatever, or it's supernatural, or it's very rarely just like, no, these are just regular teens and they've been forced into a situation where they just have to kill each other. So I think that's what's different about it. There's not a reason. There's not like, none of them have reasons they want to like particularly kill each other. They might have reasons that they don't like each other, but they don't have reasons they want to murder anybody. It's not calculated in that way. They're just forced into the situation, and they're bad at it. Like, you know, most of them are bad at it, in the sense that, yes, they kind of know the sharp end goes in like into a body, so that's how you kill someone. But none of them are like so skilled that you're like, oh my God, this is, you know, they're not having like big fights that are like well structured or well choreographed. It's like, no, they're just kind of like hacking or stabbing or pointing and shooting because they don't really know what they're doing. And I think that's what's nice about it. Like, no one gets so cool or clever. No one gets like does a Rambo bit. Do you mean it's just like they're using a weapon as best as they know how to use a weapon. And that means that no one's dying necessarily as quickly as they should. Like, you know, you're getting stabbed in places that won't necessarily kill you, but you're going to bleed a lot. And maybe you'll die slowly, or maybe you'll get an infection, and I think that like that brutality is like, oh man, like, because if you're going to die or you're going to kill teens, you kind of hope that at least be killed quickly. But these are like, it's like death by 1,000 cuts sometimes. It's like real slow, some of them. Or like there's real tussles that lead up to them. It's like not always just this clean, like good death. And I think that as well. And, you know, it's very realistic. There's not like fountains of blood, but there's a lot of blood. And it feels like a real amount of blood. And they just, you know, there's lots of, well, the shots that have the bodies in it, I think are more brutal rather than just the at the moment killings. It's when there's like just bodies of kids and just the blood surrounding. You're just like, oh man, like this is like in the classroom when they had to finish a video with like the body of like a classmate on the floor. Like it's those scenes that feel the most brutal and the most like, and yeah, after Nobu's neck gets exploded, he's like little chunks of him like around the room, and it's the I think it's a great amount of gore. I think it's just the right amount. It feels realistic. They don't go over the top, and I think it being quite real is what makes it horrifying, because it's like, yeah, I imagine that's what a dead teen would look like. You know,
I imagine that's what a dead teen would look like. Yeah. That's a clip I'm going to use.
That feels accurate. I've never seen one, but like it feels accurate. It feels
I think your point about kind of seeing the bodies still be peppered around the island and seeing them after the kind of the bloody explosive killing is done is the thing that might stick with people, because our relationship with screen violence is all sorts of fucked up. And I'm not talking about kind of exactly what we see in the screen, but the things that people find most controversial are usually not the explosive violence. Like, because I've been in Scream world for a few weeks now, there's this point that Wes Craven made. I listened to the audio commentary. I think of the first film is where he says this, where he was like, the thing that he was battling the MPAA against when they're attempting to kind of cut some of the scenes of the film was that they found it really too much that you saw the reaction on the face of a character as she was about to die. As she was like, after she got stabbed, I think this is Casey in the opening scene of Scream. And there's this shot kind of her face as she was about to die, and she was kind of bleeding to death and kind of looking up at her killer. And that's the thing that they made him almost cut. Because it's the humanity, it's the kind of seeing the aftermath of the thing that we're enjoyed and kind of, you know, see quite a lot, both in the news and in fiction and everywhere else. That's fine. But once you start seeing the aftermath, the kind of the human aftermath, that's what's not supposed to be entertaining. And I always found that like really, really interesting and telling that we're okay with screen violence as long as we don't have to think about what comes after the heads explode and the kids got like stabbed through the forehead and shit. As long as we don't have to see kind of the bodies lying around, because that reminds us too much of real life violence and like what it looks like when somebody actually gets hurt or killed.
And that's, I mean, that's the most brutal thing about it is like seeing a person go from a person to a dead thing is like a very surreal, and then to have that, because they're no longer a person, they're no longer there, and to have them just like, even someone like touching a body, like, you know, Nana is grabbing onto Nobu's body, and even that, it's like these are very visceral things that people have real feelings about. There's an amazing scene where we see Mitsuko like she's like just killed two people and they're lying there like naked and bloody in this kind of area, and it's like this tiny scene. It's like just a clip of her like leaving this area after she's killed these two guys, and it's it's like, oh my God, like it's those parts, and it's very good at showing you. So like in the lighthouse scene, right, which we'll talk about in a minute, I'm sure, but like the girl who survives, once she jumps off, it's not that she's jumped, we already know she's jumped, and it wouldn't be seeing her jump, it's that they have that clip of her body on the rocks below. It's those moments. It's when they talk about those two other kids who hang themselves and they have that clip of just seeing them. It's the fact that we keep going back to seeing Nana's dad being who's hung himself. And, you know, it's these things. It's just seeing a body is like, so that's at the very beginning. We see, you know, she and Nana who's dead, like, his trousers are down for some reason, which I don't know. But like, we see that he's hung himself, and it's that discovery. He throws up, right? So he sees a dead body, sees his father's dead body, and immediately is sick. And then suddenly he's seeing like dead bodies like every couple of hours, and having to like not react to it. And that change, that turn in your head of like these kids having to have that turn in their head where seeing a friend die, it has to go from seeing a friend die to just seeing bodies and not connecting with it, because otherwise it's too horrifying. And we're kind of on that same journey, and it's like, you know, the director was saying when he talks about having to clean up bodies after, it's that same switch of like just having stuff to do and not being able to do it, but we are like having to deal with the bodies, but then also move on to the next scene and follow the story. And I think and you kind of have to leave it behind to get to the end, to be happy for the kids at the end. You have to leave the island literally full of dead children behind you. And that is horrifying. That is like really disturbing. And I guess that is like still that's why people connect with it, or people have a different response to it, I think, so often to this film, is because leaves you with just a more horrifying like aftertaste than like a teen slasher was, which you can go away from, and you might be talking about it because you enjoyed it, but this leaves you with like a darker, like deeper, like sadness, or like, oh God, that was a lot, like feeling. And it's just layered. It's more layered than those films usually are, and I think that's what it is.
And to lighten it up a little bit and talk about some kids dying.
Let's talk about some fun kids dying.
I mean, there's a lot of kill scenes in this. The kill count is I lost count. Basically, everyone dies.
Everyone, yeah.
But do you have and I wanna I mean we've already alluded to this. I'm definitely gonna talk about the kitchen scene. But do you have any particular favorite kill scenes?
The kitchen scenes is my favorite as well. It's the top one, so we'll talk about that in a minute, because that's like up there with it's just a brilliant like piece of like film.
It's just a brilliant scene.
Yeah, the whole beginning to end of it is just amazing. But I'm a big fan of the girl fights. So basically the two fights, my other two favorites are the fights that Mitsuko has. So the first one, she finds a girl hiding in a shed, and she just walks in all like immediately terrifying. And this girl stupidly trusts her, which, I mean, that was dumb. But she is like they have like a tussle, and then she's got like what does she have? Like, it's like a scythe. What's it called? Those, like a hoe, like when you're gardening.
Oh, like a hose?
No, like a hoe, like one of those like things with like I think it's a scythe.
Oh, yes, the thing that the thing you use to plow the earth. Yeah. And she was like, I didn't like this at first, but now I can see how it's useful.
No, it's great. Yeah, and she has a whole little speech about it. And it's like really good, it's really close and really like brutal. That's like an up close kill. That's like that. It's a really good in to that character, because it's like she's prepared. If she can kill someone that close while she's talking in their ear and like holding them and literally holding something, she's not to be fucked with. And I really love it. That's our first, like, yeah, okay. So we know that she's what she's about. And then her second kill is where we momentarily maybe see some vulnerability around her. Like, so she walks into this room and a girl pulls a gun on her. and is like accusing her all the stuff. She accuses some really dark stuff, right? She tells her, she's like, you made so-and-so go out with like old pervs for money. It's like, oh my God, she's like been pimping some like of her schoolmates out. She's a bully. And this girl, but she's saying all this shit, but you're kind of like, I didn't want Mitsuko to die, but I hate when villains or people do that thing where they're like, I'm going to explain to you why. It's like, well, just do it and then know why you did it. Because this explanation is going to get you fucked up. This is what's going to get you. And it is what gets her. She's talking too much. And then Mitsuko pulls out a taser, tases the gun out of her hand, and then just like manages to like shoot this girl as she's trying to run away. So she's like, because she's the only one who has tactics. I like her, like, I like that she's like always planning. She's always like 3 steps ahead and like planning what she's going to do. And actually, someone just shot her. They'd be fine. But everyone wants to like talk about why they're shooting her.
She's that bitch.
She's that bitch. Everyone has to like give her a whole speech. And then the kitchen scene is my favorite. And then honorable mention is the knife throw at the beginning, because that is it's insane. Like to like whip out a knife and like immediately getting it happens so quick. I was like, oh, that is precision. That is.
It's also the moment where we realize, oh, they're not fucking around. They're really gonna murder. They're really gonna be murdering the kids.
And the rules don't even extend to, yes, it's meant to be the kids killing each other. Oh, but if he wants to kill them, he will also.
Yeah, it's like the rules apply only to the children, not to the adults. And he's the only adult in the room, so fuck you.
Yeah. Which sets up the idea that anyone could come, if one of them wanted to like come and shoot you at some point, they could. Like, do you mean? It's just like it adds to that like overarching, like the idea of being watched and the terror of that someone is in control of this and could actually do what they wanted. Yeah, so those are my favorites. But the ultimate favorite is the kitchen. Is all the girls in the kitchen.
It's my favorite scene, I think it may be in the entire film. It's the childlike, cooking bits and like being so happy about their stew that they made and stuff. Yeah. But also then how quickly they switch.
Yeah.
And the little girl who's like just there sort of lying and who knows exactly what's going to happen and who sees everything descend into chaos. Who at any point
could have like, I don't know, slapped the thing out of her hand. I don't know. Tried to stop this happening, but didn't. So like the whole, the whole scene starts with Nana, who's been injured and gets rescued by one of these girls and taken back and bandaged up. He's been asleep for like hours, and they have a plan. They're going to go find one of the other transfer students who headband guy, what's his name, Count Kawada, and Noriko, who have a plan to get out. So they're going to try and find them, and they're waiting for him to feel better enough. And they've they found this little lighthouse, and they're making food. And they're basically just trying to live a semi-normal life until the third day, and unless they find a way out, or until the third day where they get blown up. So everything's like they're playing house. It's all very nice, and
it's all adorable.
But one of the girls who's it's adorable, and then one of the girls who saw Nana accidentally kill one of the other kids. Now, it feels unfair that she holds this resentment, considering the position they're in, right? So she was for some reason hiding in the woods, sees like a little hatchet go into this kid's head. It's like, you know what, they're falling down a hill, but also I think they were fighting, so one of them was going to die, and so it feels unfair that she's held on to this resentment against Nana. Like, oh, you killed someone. It's like, dude, look around, everyone is killing people. Like, you're not in a position to be judgmental about murder at this point.
Well, it's like this very childlike way of judging one thing but not the other, and being completely unable to see the big picture. It's like, girlie, this is, I know that you're trying to impart justice here, but I think we're past justice.
Everyone's between a rock and a hard place. And then if someone sees you kill Nana, then who's to stop them from being like, well, you kill Nana, so I'm going to kill you. Do you know what I mean? It's like, come on. But so obviously her weapon that she was given in her bag was a little vial of nondescript poison. I love when poison's just labeled as poison.
It's just poison. Yeah. I
love it.
Just the skull like, and the bones. That's it. This poison, is death.
Just some sort of poison. I am every time a film has a bottle that is poison, I'm like, I love that this is clearly labeled They're like, we're not going to be caught out in a lawsuit. It clearly says poison on it.
But also it's extremely dramatic poison to make it cinematic. Could that make someone like explode and vomit blood out of their mouth? It's like, yeah, otherwise we'll just not know. Like
2 sips of that food. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, damn, what is this? Like, yeah, like what poison? Because most poisons take a little while, but okay. So yeah, she dumps the whole she even saves some of it. Like, she dumps the whole thing in Nana's plate, where it's like, I don't think he deserves this, but okay. And then she's all like, oh, I'm going to take it into him. And then this girl comes in from watch and just takes a bowl. She's like a super perky girl. I think she was a cheerleader. I think there's a...
Wait, did you make this up, or was it actually in the movie?
I believe she was one of the cheerleaders when you flash back to the basketball games, because she is just like perky as fuck and grabs a bowl and is like, delicious noodle soup. And it's like, well, first of all, clearly that was on a tray for somebody. But second of all, the girl who poisoned it, it's like, you could have done something. You could have slapped the bowl, slapped the spoon out of her hand.
There was many options
there. But also, I love that no one suspects. So the girl, like, vomits blood. And they're all like, oh my God, what the fuck? Who did this? It's like, why is no one thinking of the girl who seemed quite keen to take the food into Nana? Like, why is no one suspect her? But no one suspects her. But they all start accusing each other of doing this, of being responsible. And then just the most bonkers shootout happens, where it's just bullets and like yelling, where it's just like, no, you did this because of blah, blah, blah. And they're just also, like, it turns so quickly into just like screaming and shooting.
But it makes complete sense. It's the most teenage girliest kind of shootout. It's like they're all screaming, they're all accusing each other of stuff that's way in the past, because that's how girl world works. And just like blindly shooting across the entire room, hoping that a bullet
will hit. It's not like, I'm trying to shoot you because I think you do it. They're just like, I'm going to spray bullets and hit all of you. I don't even give a shit anymore.
My favorite part is when one of the girls who is like the de facto, well, not the leader or whatever, she just takes the entire bowl of noodle soup and just slams it and throws it on the table and the floor, being like, shut the fuck up, all of y'all. But also, I am gonna kill everyone.
Yeah. And then, like,
all the resentments are coming out.
Yeah, and it's just like, well, no, she's not. Oh my God, it's just, and then the very end, when it's just like, the one girl, who's the last girl who shoots someone? The girl's on the table and she, like, I don't know, it becomes like these last two. Mm-hmm. Who, like, one's been shot and the other one's been shot, and they just end up shooting each other, and it's just like, this is... And then the one girl who actually did the poisoning is just hiding under a table, like, and then she's like, oh, it's not my fault. It's like, I think it is, my love.
Yes, it is, girlie!
I'm pretty sure it is. And then she just lets Nana out and then just throws herself off the top of the lighthouse. And I'm just like, well... This could have gone better, guys.
Why is it funny?
And it's like, they made it like 2 days having a nice time. They're like, no, everyone dies. It's like, this could have gone. And poor Nana's just in bed like, guys, he got told he was going to have lunch in a minute. And suddenly he's like locked in a room and there's just shouting and bullets. And he's just like,
and they've thrown the entire noodle soup on the floor. There's not even like a tiny bit of food left.
No one has any noodle soup left. It's just, oh my goodness. I love it. It is like quite comedic, because it does just turn into this like, and it all seems so domestic and so nice at the beginning. And it feels like these girls have got their shit together, level-headed. They're not going to freak out. And then just, I mean, yes, to be fair, it is like quite a dramatic death that sets them off. Like, it is the sudden, like, explosive, like, blood vomit of their friend that sets them off. Mm-hmm. But, like, there's no critical thinking implied. They're not like, okay, wait, what happened? Who had the soup? They're just like, oh my God! And, like, some of them have handguns. One or two of them have, like, machine guns. So when I say bullets spraying, it is like, bullets are just, like, flying around this kitchen like it's nonsense. And, yeah, it's amazing. It's an amazing scene. And then poor Nana just doesn't even know what happened. He doesn't even know.
Bless him.
He just comes out of the room like, what the fuck? Like, he sees all the bodies in the kitchen, then goes up to the top of the light, sees her body on the rock below, and it's just like, okay, I guess I'll just make my way into the woods again. Like, like, it's incredible. It's an incredible, like, just on its own, like, piece of, like, almost theatre of just how chaos can descend so quickly. And it's a perfect scene of, like, these kids are on the edge. They are on the edge of losing it the whole time. No one, even if they seem calm, no one is calm. That's that scene. That's what tells you that. It's like, yeah, everyone's on the cusp of blowing their friends away at this point.
And to start wrapping up our chat about Battle Royale, the controversy that surrounded it was huge, but its influence in the 22 years since it came out has just been I can't even quantify it. You know, everything from very popular kind of American stuff like The Hunger Games, obviously, is pretty much Battle Royale, but made more YA or more digestible YA. Kill Bill both casts one of the actresses from Battle Royale and kind of reuses entire imagery from the film. There's a whole genre of video games that basically is the match to the death as kind of instituted by this film, and also there's all the subsequent books and the subsequent films and all the copycat movies, and even like the term Battle Royale has become the de facto kind of expression to mean a match to the death, or, you know, kind of survival of the fittest, essentially, but kind of in a gameplay scenario. So where do you see some of the biggest influences of Battle Royale on pop culture? Because I think it's like almost impossible to just say just film or just TV, because it's everywhere.
It's hard to say. Like, it's all the things. The fact that the term has become part of our lexicon to mean a very specific thing just shows you how implemented. I think people who haven't even seen Battle Royale would know what that is, know what the term is, which is an amazing reach. And there are generations that would have just played there's Fortnite Battle Royale, and there's another one that would have seen, who would have played that game, but again, not knowing where it comes from. There's been it's kind of, I feel like Black Mirror has elements of it. There was an amazing dystopian Channel 4 show that was set in maybe it was a film. It wasn't a show. Maybe it was a film. I think it was like German or Belgium film where it's like around a mall, where it's the same thing. They've selected random people and they have to fight to the death to survive. And it's because of this, because of the way the economy works now. There's films like Guns Akimbo, which is not good, but has elements of it. But you can basically any kind of situation where someone unsuspectingly is put in a position where it's like, oh, you have to kill a bunch of people now to get out of this. It reminds me of that film. It always harkens back to that film. That feels like the start point for me. And yes, obviously there's the very glossy YA version, which is The Hunger Games, which, which the writer has said that she never read the book, but it's like, I don't believe that when you were putting your drafts of this book in, at no point did anyone in that process go, this is a lot like Battle Royale. I find it incredibly hard to believe that no one would have caught that. So even if she personally hadn't read it, which fine, we'll give her the benefit of the doubt, it feels like very suspicious.
Mean, at the very best, it's just so ingrained in the culture that, you're like, oh, I'm going to do this thing because, and you just don't know where the idea comes from, but the idea has just been planted in your head because it's so widespread now that you're like, well, I'm not ripping anything off specifically.
But I believe, but I get, if we give her the benefit of the doubt, it's like, yes, it could have been just an idea like floating around, but I believe that the film, before the book was even, her book was out, the film was out. I'm pretty sure that the book came out, the book came out in 2008, right? Is that right?
Yeah. The book and the film existed.
Yes. So it just feels just so unlikely that no one who's reading the proofs of her book, no one at any point was like, she wrote 3 books also. Isn't it 3? Or like maybe like
3 that I know of. I haven't read them. I've seen the movies.
Series. So you're aware at some point. Yeah. So like, so yeah, I just feel, that's the most obvious one, right? It feels like a direct, like, not an homage. It feels like it's a rip-off a little bit. And then obviously Americanized and Hollywoodized in a like it's just made a lot more sexy and like glossy and whatever. But yeah, even like I mentioned earlier, that Yellow Jackets, even when it's not something that's specifically about fighting to the death, even the idea of being stranded, and obviously that always plays back to Lord of the Flies as well. But I mean, like Yellow Jackets reminds me, because it's these kids on an island trying to figure out how to survive, and or trying to figure out how to navigate the situation when they don't have the tools to navigate the situation, and a hierarchy's forming, or people who are good at certain things forming and people who are less good at certain things. Like, do you know what I mean? It becomes about that. And whereas in Battle Royale, obviously it's like each other and the powers that be that are the biggest threat. The threat in Yellow Jackets at the moment, we just finished, the season just finished, is like the winter coming, there not being any food. So there are these outside things that are going to make decisions for them or make them decide things quicker than they would like to. So even in that, I feel like it feels unlikely again that the people who are making Yellow Jackets wouldn't have watched that as a reference, wouldn't have watched Battle Royale. And, you know, the fact it's on an island, the fact that it's not just surviving each other, it's surviving the elements. Like, these kids also have to like eat and be warm and sleep and all that stuff. And I think it's, so I would feel like if you're going to make something, especially about teens being stranded or being forced into a difficult game or weird situation, that would be something you watched. Even for something like Squid Game, to be honest, they're not like really similar in terms of like, obviously it's like Squid Game's like incredibly swish looking and incredibly like more organized in a way that feels like, you know, manufactured. Like every game is really so specific. But even being in that position of like, this is a way for you to survive, like, I don't know, like it feels like that would also be a reference point for something like that.
Oh, I think absolutely. And obviously it's like two very different cultures as well. And the imagery is quite different, but I think the basic connection between kind of games and violence is very much at the heart of it. But both in Battle Royale and in Squid Game, the fact that the violence is so extreme but kind of softened in a way by both the very pastel colored aesthetic of Squid Game and in Battle Royale, but the fact that these are kids, like they're still in their school uniform and everything they do kind of feels a little bit childlike because they are children. So you kind of, it's shocking and also approachable in that way. And I think, you know, this whole premise of kind of tackling into a great social malaise is through this extreme form of overly designed violence, because that's what it is, right? It's like it's some people designing a situation where they can get away with murdering or seeing other people kill each other, but they always have the fingers on the control button. They are the only ones who oversee the entire game, who have all the aces up their sleeves, who at any point can actually press a couple buttons or a button and actually eliminate everyone, because the kids in Battle Royale are always under threat that if nobody dies at the end of the day, they will just all be killed.
But this is also like the thing they set up at the beginning, because he has a remote for Nobu's necklace. Like, so even though these things are rigged to go off at the end of the 3 days, it's like also someone could just trigger one.
Yeah.
If they wanted to.
Exactly. So the threat is always there.
Yeah. And I feel like the teen girl in Squid Game, you could literally pick her up and transplant her into like, as in like, her character in Squid Game is someone you feel would do incredibly well. Like her and Mitsuko would probably be working together. But do you know what I mean? There's that kind of feeling of like, she feels like the teens in Battle Royale, in the sense of like, she's had this really hard life and she's just trying to survive or make I don't know, she's just trying to get through her days at this place. And there's so that connects it for me. It's like, yeah, I feel like that her teenness is observed in the same way that these teens are. In that in Squid Game, she's incredibly smart and good and whatever, and like all the stuff, but she's still a kid and she's still scared. She's just good at hiding it. which is what's so good, which is, I think she reminds me of Mitsuko. Like, it feels like they feel like parallel characters, because Mitsuko is like, she's tough and she's scary and she's smart and she's doing well in this game. And then when she's killed by the only person I feel who could kill her, which is anime hair guy, he shoots her, and you get flashes to like how awful actually her life was, how like something she endured, something truly, or was about like something really awful. Like, her mum wasn't protecting her. Her mum was like ready to sell her off to some creepy old man, just to get some money. Like, and it, you know, she's actually had like she was a kid and she had to toughen herself up to get to this point. And with the same with the girl in Squid Game, where it's like she had to look after her brother and she wants to get him back, and she had to harden herself. And that's always more sad when it's a child who's had to like do that, when they've had to grow up so quickly and they've had to like harden themselves to the world and like separate themselves, because that's the only way they know how to be sure they're going to be protected, is if they're doing it. And so I think there's also that, like, and I honestly think if you're making a film that's like kind of this despairing like teen thing where they're in like moral peril, like moral, no, like in peril and like real danger, I feel like it's a film that you'd automatically go to. There's so much there, and like I said earlier, there's so much texture, there's so many layers. It's such a well crafted, well written film, just not for the story but for the characters. And considering it doesn't really start you with like a load of backstory or start you with like a huge setup, that it launches you right in, the fact that it gets you like quite early on in like really invested is a testament to like how well made it is, or how well observed it is. So I think it's a touchstone or a starter point for a lot of filmmakers, probably. I imagine it would be.
Thank you so much for your time and for your insight on Battle Royale. And before we wrap up, is there anything that you wanted to mention about the film that we haven't covered in our conversation?
I just want to, I think it's actually a right time for it to come back. When we're seeing shows like Yellow Jackets, like Euphoria, even, and just the way that every other week there's a piece in the paper about how like millennials or Gen Z are ruining everything. It feels like quite a ripe time for it to come back into like the social. I want to imagine that people are about like, oh, it's a good time for people to rewatch it if they haven't watched it or for a while, or if they've never seen it, to see it for the first time, because it is that thing of like feeling kind of abandoned and lost, like especially with the governments we have in place like now. Like for young people, it definitely still feels quite modern and quite resonant. What am I saying? Resonant. Oh my God. As a story and as an idea. And I feel like as a teen, I think it definitely affected me more seeing it as a teen, because it feels like for you. And especially now, I think there's a reason that we're getting these shows again, because there's something there that needs to, like a hole that needs to be filled, or something that needs to be shown of like, yeah, actually we're also having a really fucking hard time. Like, I'm not a teen obviously, but do you need that like generational thing of being blamed for stuff that isn't your fault, and no one considering the fact that you're actually already trying really hard but you're still a kid. You know, kids now are being blamed for like having too much avocado toast. That's why your life's shit. You have far too much avocado toast. That's why you have no money. That's why you can't buy a house.
It's got nothing to do with the economy or coming into the workforce.
The decisions of the generations before you. Nothing to do with the government or how they're running things or the money they're taking away from programs, or it's your fault. And I think that's why these shows are getting so much traction now. And I think Battle Royale, if you haven't seen it, you should watch it. And if you've seen it before, you should rewatch it, because it's really actually apropos for the time we're in.
Damn fucking right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was really fun. I love that film.
And where can people find more of your work online?
You can follow me on at Isaura_BB. Yeah.
Yes.
Every time.
Every
On Twitter, I put anything I write or doing, I put it up there. You can also follow me on Instagram at @Asarasaris. You can also read my monthly column on the Final Girls website under the Bloody Women heading. I have a column every month called Bloody Perfect, which is about my favourite horror scenes. And also, at the moment, I'm an actor as well. You can watch me in Toast of Tinseltown on iPlayer, playing actually a kind of parody of a Manson girl. So
What?
It's very apropos.
You did not tell me that. No.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole thing's like kind of like there's a couple of episodes where it's kind of I'm parodying a Manson girl. I'm called Snorky, which is obviously a very great name for me. So I'm very smiley, creepy hippie girl. Yeah. I'm in episodes 4 and 5. Yeah. Well, I don't receive them. I'm listening to Aidan Turner and Matt Berry. But yeah, I'm in episodes 4 and 5. They're all on iPlayer. I think the episode, if you're watching it on TV, episode 4 is on the 25th of January.
Oh my God. So, okay. I gotta hang up and go watch this.
Yeah, you'll see me there. Yeah. So that's
oh my God, I'm excited to see you on my TV.
I look great. I'm a huge fro. I just smile the whole time. Which was a great cover because I was like laughing at Matt Barry the whole time. So it's very convenient that my character just had to be kind of this grinning idiot the whole time. So, but yeah, it was very fun, and they're very fun episodes. The whole series is very fun. My parents made me watch all 6 episodes the minute they dropped on iPlayer, so I've seen them all.
So cute.
It's very funny, but yeah. So that's where you can find me.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.